The Lotus Garden restaurant sat like a jewel box in the heart of Gangnam district, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the neon pulse of Seoul's Friday night. Inside, the elegant Korean fusion establishment had emptied to just a handful of lingering patrons, their quiet conversations mixing with the soft clink of porcelain and silverware. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. Grace Chen moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, her thick fingers wrapped around a glass water pitcher. At 5'6" and 210 pounds, she filled out her waitress uniform in ways that made the buttons strain slightly across her full chest and round belly. Her deep brown skin seemed to absorb the warm restaurant lighting, making her glow against the pale minimalist decor. Box braids, meticulously done, fell past her shoulders and swayed gently as she walked. Her hands trembled. It was subtle, barely noticeable unless someone watched closely. Grace set the pitcher down on a nearby table and gripped the edge, her knuckles pressing into the white tablecloth. She took a slow breath, feeling the familiar burn in her palms. The chemical damage went deep, nerve-ending, screaming protests she'd learned to ignore over 6 months of training. Her warm brown eyes tracked across the restaurant to the corner booth where Maya sat, head bent over homework, long black hair falling like a curtain around her face. The 12-year-old wore a long-sleeved cardigan despite the warmth of the restaurant, her unnaturally pale skin making her look almost porcelain against the dark booth leather. Grace's daughter. The thought still felt surreal even after 6 months of watching, waiting, planning. She checked her watch. 11:30 p.m. 13 minutes until closing. 13 minutes until she would walk over to that booth, sit down across from the child she'd carried in her body, and finally, after 12 years of grief and 4 years of searching, tell Maya the truth. Grace reached up, her fingers brushing the acupuncture needle tucked behind her left ear like a pen. The metal was cool against her fingertips. She'd practiced with it every single day for 6 months, training until her hands screamed, until the poison coating its tip had seeped into her skin and begun the slow process of killing her from the inside out. She took 3 steps toward Maya's booth. The windows exploded. Glass erupted inward in a crystalline wave, the sound deafening in the quiet restaurant. Grace's body reacted before her mind caught up, pure military instinct honed by years of training that her plus-size frame concealed perfectly. She lunged forward with impossible speed, her soft bulk moving like water, and grabbed Maya just as masked figures poured through the shattered windows. "What's happening?" Maya's scream was high and terrified. Grace didn't answer. She shoved the girl under the booth table, her thick arms surprisingly strong as she positioned Maya behind the booth's wooden support. The other diners were already scattering, kitchen staff bolting for the back exit, chairs clattering as people ran. 30 masked operatives in tactical gear filled the restaurant like a black tide. Grace straightened, pulling the acupuncture needle from behind her ear in one fluid motion. The needle caught the light 6 inches of surgical steel with a faint discoloration on its tip that spoke of something deadly. Her round face, usually warm and gentle, went ice cold. Her eyes hardened into something that didn't match the soft curves of her cheeks or the fullness of her body. The lead operative rushed her. Grace sidestepped, her thick thighs providing a low center of gravity that made her movement impossibly stable. She drove the needle into the pressure point just below his ear, the spot where the vagus nerve ran close to the surface. He dropped instantly, his body going rigid before crumpling like someone had cut his strings. She yanked the needle free, already spinning. The second operative came from her left. Grace used the fallen man as a shield, her soft arms wrapping around his tactical vest and hauling him up with strength that seemed impossible for someone who looked like a waitress. The second operative's baton struck his unconscious teammate instead of Grace's head. Grace dropped the body and kicked a chair. It flew into the third operative's knee with a crack that echoed through the restaurant. He stumbled, and Grace was already there, driving the needle into the pressure point on his shoulder. His arm went limp, weapon clattering to the floor as he fell. 4 and 5 attacked simultaneously. Grace grabbed a metal serving tray from a nearby table, her thick fingers gripping it like a shield. She deflected the fourth operative's baton strike. The impact rang like a bell, and used her momentum to spin into the fifth. The needle found the space between his shoulder blades, sliding between vertebrae, with the precision of a surgeon. He collapsed, nerves severed, body refusing to obey. Grace's hands were shaking worse now. The poison in her system made her fingers cramp, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. 6 operatives coordinated their attack, coming from multiple angles. Grace backed toward the kitchen, her breathing already heavy, realistic for her size, for anyone fighting this hard, but she used the doorway as a choke point. Only two could approach at once. She grabbed a hot pot from the stove, ignoring the burn on her already damaged palms, and threw the scalding soup at two operatives. Their screams filled the kitchen as they fell back, hands clawing at their masks. Another rushed through the opening. Grace struck his temple, the superficial temporal artery pressure point, and he dropped. Her hands cramped violently. She nearly dropped the needle. The kitchen became a blur of violence. Grace slammed one operative's head into the industrial refrigerator, the metal denting under the impact. She swept another's legs with a mop handle, her thick thighs providing the leverage for the strike. The needle found the base of his skull, and he went down, but one got through her defense. His punch landed in her ribs and Grace gasped, staggering. Pain exploded through her soft midsection. He followed up with another strike and Grace barely blocked it, her damaged hands making her slower. Desperate, she did something he didn't expect. She bit down on his wrist, her teeth finding the pressure point through his tactical glove. He released her with a yelp. Grace struck the nerve cluster in his armpit, and his arm went dead. A follow-up strike to his neck, and he joined the others on the floor. 21 down, 9 to go. The final operatives had regrouped. They'd watched her technique, learned from their fallen teammates' mistakes. They kept their distance, circling her in the kitchen like wolves around wounded prey. Grace could barely grip the needle anymore. Her hands were locked in cramps, fingers curling uselessly. Blood trickled from cuts on her face, and her ribs, definitely cracked, maybe broken, made every breath agony. She was cornered, and she was going to die. Her eyes darted around the kitchen, looking for anything she could use. She spotted the industrial gas line running to the stove. Without hesitation, Grace kicked it. The line ruptured with a hiss, and natural gas began flooding the kitchen. The operatives paused, suddenly uncertain. Grace grabbed the emergency lighter from the wall, her damaged hands barely able to hold it. She flicked it once. The flame caught. "Stop or we all burn," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. One operative, younger than the others, cockier, laughed. "You're bluffing." Grace's warm brown eyes had gone completely cold. "I've died already, 12 years ago. Try me." The standoff stretched. Grace could see them calculating, weighing odds. Then the cocky one rushed her anyway, apparently deciding she wouldn't actually do it. Grace threw the needle. It flew like a dart, spinning through the air, and struck his throat at 15 feet. He dropped mid-sprint, hitting the floor and sliding to a stop at her feet. That was it. Her last offensive move. The needle clattered away across the tiles, and Grace's hands locked completely. She couldn't even make fists anymore. Her fingers were useless clubs of flesh and bone. The 9 remaining operatives advanced, weapons drawn. Grace backed against the wall, her soft body pressed against cold tile, her hands hanging useless at her sides. This was how it ended. She wouldn't even get to tell Maya the truth. Gunshots erupted from the front of the restaurant. All 9 operatives spun toward the sound. Through the kitchen doorway, Grace saw them. Kang Jae-hoon and 15 armed security guards storming through the restaurant's front entrance. Jae-hoon was exactly as she remembered from 12 years ago, tall, lean, moving with the controlled precision of a weapon disguised as a businessman. His sharp jawline was set in cold fury, and the scar across his left eyebrow seemed more pronounced in the harsh light. His men moved like professionals, quickly disarming and securing the 9 standing operatives. Jae-hoon walked through the carnage, his expensive Italian shoes crunching on broken glass, his eyes taking in the 21 unconscious bodies littering his restaurant. Then he saw Grace, bleeding and broken against the kitchen wall. His eyes widened. "Grace? The waitress?" Grace tried to stand. Her legs gave out and she slid down the wall, leaving a smear of blood on the white tiles. Her round face was battered, one eye already swelling shut, but she met his gaze steadily. Maya crawled out from under the booth, but she didn't run to Grace. She ran past her, straight to Jae-hoon. "Dad! Dad, what's happening?" The word hit Grace like a physical blow. Dad. Maya called him Dad with the ease of 12 years of practice of knowing exactly who her father was. Jae-hoon wrapped his arms around Maya, holding her close, his hand protective on the back of her chemically straightened hair. Over Maya's shoulder, Jae-hoon looked at Grace. His dark eyes were hard, suspicious, dangerous. "Who the hell are you? Really?" Grace's damaged hands trembled in her lap. Her whole body was shutting down from the poison, from the fight, from 12 years of grief finally catching up to her. But she forced the words out. "I'm her mother." Maya's head whipped around, her caramel-colored face lighter than it should be, chemically altered to erase half her heritage, staring at Grace in shock and confusion. What? Grace met her daughter's eyes for the first time as truth instead of secret. I'm your birth mother, and I came to take you home. The world tilted. Grace felt consciousness slipping away, felt her body finally giving up after holding on for so long. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Maya's face, her face. Grace's own features reflected back at her in a child she'd held for only 30 seconds 12 years ago. Then nothing. When Grace woke, she was in an office. The Lotus Gardens manager office, she realized, recognizing the desk she'd walked past every shift for 6 months. But it had been converted into something else, a makeshift holding room. The operatives were lined against one wall, zip-tied and unconscious, their masks removed to reveal a mix of faces. Maya sat in a chair in the far corner, as far from Grace as the small room allowed. The girl's arms were wrapped around herself, her thin frame making her look even younger than 12. She stared at Grace with a mixture of fear and confusion that made Grace's heart break all over again. Jae-hoon entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. He moved with that same controlled precision Grace remembered, but now there was fury underneath it. My head of security wants to kill you. My legal team wants to disappear you. I want answers. Grace tried to stand. Her hands wouldn't cooperate, still locked in cramps from the poison. She fell back onto the couch, gasping. Jae-hoon's eyes narrowed, focusing on her hands. Your hands? Grace struggled to speak through the pain radiating up her arms. I need to explain. About Maya. About 12 years ago. You have 5 minutes before I call the police. So Grace told him. She told him about Los Angeles, about being 27 and fresh out of the military with an honorable discharge and medical bills she couldn't pay. About the surrogacy agency that promised $80,000 to carry a child for a wealthy Korean couple. The paperwork never specified my race, Grace said, her voice rough. Your wife's oversight. She told him about the pregnancy, about how he'd visited regularly, kind and grateful, about how Min-Jee had barely shown up, always in Korea for business, about giving birth at Cedars-Sinai Hospital to a healthy baby girl. I held her for 30 seconds, Grace whispered, her damaged hands trembling in her lap. Just 30 seconds before they took her away. I told her to be loved, to be safe, to be everything. Maya made a small sound from her corner. Grace couldn't tell if it was a sob or something else. Then Grace told them about the day after the birth, when Min-Jee had visited her hospital room alone for the first time. About the shock and disgust on Min-Jee's face when she'd seen Grace, really seen her for the first time. She told me the baby died during delivery, Grace said. Cord strangulation. She showed me a death certificate. It was real. She'd bribed officials. She told me she'd had the baby cremated in Korea. Cultural tradition, she said. Jae-hoon's face had gone pale. Min-Jee told me you died in childbirth. She showed me a death certificate too. Grace nodded. That night she tried to make it real. She found me in the hospital stairwell. She pushed me down the stairs. 3 broken ribs, concussion. The hospital said I fell. Postpartum izziness. Jesus, Jae-hoon breathed. I spent 2 years broken, Grace continued. Depressed, grieving a child I thought was dead. Then 4 years ago a private investigator I'd hired found immigration records. You and Min-Jee entered Korea with an infant 12 years ago. Hospital records showed a baby girl named Park Maya receiving care. Grace's eyes found Maya across the room. He showed me photos, you at 3, 5, 7, your skin getting lighter in each picture. Maya's hands flew to her face, touching the pale skin that didn't match the heritage visible in her bone structure, her hair texture, her eyes. Where is Min-Jee now? Grace asked. Jae-hoon's jaw clenched. I don't know. She hasn't been home in 3 days. Run the DNA test, Grace said quietly. You need to know the truth. Jae-hoon called for his tech specialist, a young woman who arrived with a portable DNA analysis kit. She swabbed Grace's cheek. Grace could barely open her mouth, her whole body failing, and collected a hair from Maya's brush. 5 minutes. That's all it took with expensive equipment and rush protocols. The tech looked up from her tablet. 97% match. She's the biological mother. The room went silent. Maya's world shattered visibly. Her thin body started shaking, her hands gripping the chair arms so hard her knuckles went white. No, that's not. Mom is my mom. Min-Jee is my MOM. Maya, Grace started. You're lying. Maya screamed, her voice cracking. You're some crazy American lady who... Maya. Jae-hoon's voice cut through her panic. The test doesn't lie. Maya ran to the corner, sliding down the wall, sobbing, Her carefully maintained image, the perfect pale skin, the straight hair, the demure cardigan seemed to crack apart with her composure. Grace wanted to go to her, wanted to hold her daughter for longer than 30 seconds. But her body wouldn't move, and even if it could, she knew Maya wasn't ready for that, might never be ready. One of the zip-tied operatives on the floor suddenly convulsed, his body seizing violently against the restraints. Jae-hoon's medic rushed over, dropping to his knees beside the man. "Boss, his vitals are crashing. Heart rate dropping, respiratory distress." Another operative started seizing, then another. Within seconds, 3 of them were convulsing on the floor, foam appearing at the corners of their mouths. Jae-hoon moved closer, his controlled demeanor cracking into concern. "What's happening to them?" The medic pulled out a portable medical scanner, running it over the closest operative's body. The device beeped rapidly, and the medic's face went pale. "Neurotoxin in his bloodstream. Boss, all of them have it." Grace's stomach dropped. Her eyes tracked across the room to where her acupuncture needle lay on the floor, the faint discoloration on its tip suddenly sinister in a way it hadn't been when she'd thought it was just a non-lethal sedative. "No, no, no, no." The words escaped her throat like a prayer that had already been denied. One of the operatives, the cocky one she'd hit in the throat, managed to pull his mask fully off with his zip-tied hands. He was gasping for air, his face flushed and sweating. He was black, Grace noticed with a jolt, around 42, with close-cropped hair and intelligent eyes that were currently wide with pain and fear. "Federal agents," he gasped out, each word seeming to cost him. "We're federal agents. Joint Task Force, here to arrest Min-Jee Park." The room froze. Grace felt the blood drain from her face. Her round cheeks, already pale from pain and poison, went ashen. "What?" The agent's breathing was getting shallower. "FBI, Korean National Police, been investigating Min-Jee for money laundering, human trafficking." He coughed, a wet sound that made the medic curse. "We thought you were hostile. You attacked, we defended." "Oh God," Grace whispered. Her damaged hands tried to cover her mouth, but they wouldn't cooperate. "Oh God, I didn't know. I thought you were. I thought Min-Jee sent you." The agent's eyes found hers. Even through the pain, there was something in his gaze. Understanding, maybe, or forgiveness Grace didn't deserve. "Agent Marcus Cole," he managed. "You were protecting the girl." Then he collapsed unconscious. Grace stared at the 30 bodies lined against the wall. 30 federal agents. Men and women who'd been doing their jobs, trying to arrest a criminal, and she'd poisoned them all. Jae-hoon's medic was already examining the others, his movements increasingly frantic. "They're all showing the same symptoms. Neurotoxin in the bloodstream, nervous system starting to shut down." "What kind of toxin?" Jae-hoon demanded. The medic retrieved Grace's needle from the floor with gloved hands, studying it under a portable microscope. His face went from concern to horrified. "This coding, boss, this is Synth 7, North Korean chemical weapon. It was banned globally in 2019. How does it work?" "It's designed for covert assassination. You code a doorknob, a pin, anything someone might touch. The victim absorbs it through skin contact. Then they die 48 hours later from what looks like natural causes: heart attack, stroke. Undetectable unless you know what to look for." The medic turned to Grace, his eyes moving over her trembling, discolored hands. "How long have you been handling this needle?" Grace's voice came out barely above a whisper. 6 months, every day, training. You've been chronically poisoning yourself. Your nervous system is degrading. That's why your hands—" He trailed off, then asked the question Grace had been avoiding. "How long do you have?" The medic looked at his scanner readings, comparing them to Grace's visible symptoms. "Based on your exposure level and the progression of nerve damage, maybe 10 hours before permanent paralysis. 18 hours before respiratory failure." Maya made a sound from her corner, a small broken whimper. "What about them?" Jae-hoon gestured to the agents. The ones who were exposed during the fight." The medic's expression was grim. "They received acute doses during combat. Synth 7 becomes irreversible after 8 hours of exposure. After that, the nervous system damage is permanent. Death follows within 12 hours. Jae-hoon checked his watch. The expensive timepiece seemed obscene in the moment, wealth and precision measuring out death in increments. "They were exposed at 11:52 p.m. It's now 12:18 a.m. They have 7 hours and 34 minutes before it's irreversible." "Is there an antidote?" Grace asked, though she already knew the answer would complicate everything. "Yes, but it must be administered within the 8-hour window. After that, it's useless. The nerve damage becomes permanent and the cascade can't be stopped." Where do we get it? The medic hesitated, glancing at Jae-hoon. Only one person in Seoul manufactures Synth-7 antidote, Dr. Han Yoon. He's a black market physician. Jae-hoon's jaw clenched, a muscle jumping in his cheek. When he spoke, his voice was flat and cold. He works for Min-Jee. Of course he did. Grace felt the cruel poetry of it. Min-Jee had set this entire trap. Given Grace the poison needle, let her train with it for months, probably watched her slowly poison herself. Put her in the restaurant where Maya ate dinner every Friday night. Let Grace think she was preparing to rescue her daughter, when really she was preparing to become a mass murderer. Agent Cole regained consciousness briefly, his eyes finding Grace through the haze of pain. Why, did you have that needle? Grace's voice broke. I didn't know. Someone gave it to me 6 months ago. Told me it was a non-lethal sedative, something to protect myself and help me get Maya out safely. I've been training with it for months. I thought she couldn't finish. You thought you were protecting the girl. Grace nodded, tears streaming down her full cheeks. Agent Cole's hand twitched, like he wanted to reach for her but couldn't make his body cooperate. Then, save us. Savi everyone. He passed out again. Jae-hoon's phone rang, the sound jarring in the heavy silence. He looked at the screen and his face went hard. He put it on speaker. Min-Jee's voice filled the room, smooth and cultured and utterly devoid of warmth. Hello, husband. Hello, Grace. Surprised you remember me after 12 years. Grace's hands clenched uselessly. Where are you? Watching. There was amusement in Min-Jee's tone. I see you met Dr. Yoon's special needle. Beautiful, isn't it? I had it made specifically for you. The confirmation hit Grace like a physical blow. You gave me the poison needle 6 months ago. You knew I'd use it. I've known you were in Seoul from the moment you arrived. Min-Jee's laugh was light, musical, horrible. Did you think I wouldn't notice a black woman working in my restaurant? I hired you personally, Grace. Put you close to Maya. Watched you plan your pathetic little rescue. Ji-hoon's controlled facade finally cracked. Min-Jee, where is the antidote? I have 32 doses. Enough for all 30 agents plus Grace plus 1 extra. But you'll never find me, husband. I've made sure of that. What do you want? Grace asked, though she suspected she already knew. Min-Jee's voice went cold, all pretense of amusement dropping away. I want you to die knowing you killed 30 innocent people trying to save a daughter who doesn't even want you. I want you to spend your last hours watching them suffer. I want you to know that everything you've done, every sacrifice, every moment of training, every drop of poison you absorbed was for nothing. The line went dead. Jae-hoon immediately called his tech specialist back. Trace that call. The young woman worked quickly, her fingers flying over her tablet. Got it. Signal originated from a private medical facility in Gangnam. The address matches Dr. Yoon's clinic. How far? 15 minutes by car. Jae-hoon was already moving, issuing orders to his security team. We go now. Get the antidote, get back here, save the agents. Grace tried to stand. Her legs cooperated this time, but when she tried to brace herself on the arm of the couch, her hands wouldn't grip. She nearly fell. Jae-hoon caught her elbow, steadying her. Up close, Grace could see the scar across his eyebrow clearly, could see the anger and confusion and something else in his dark eyes. You can't even hold a weapon anymore. I don't need to hold one. I need to get to that clinic. Grace's voice was steady despite everything. Despite the poison, despite the pain, despite 30 dying federal agents and a daughter who looked at her like a stranger. Min-Jee set this trap for me. She wants me to come. Exactly why you shouldn't. I'm coming too. Both adults turned. Maya had stood up from her corner, her thin frame rigid with determination that looked strange on someone who'd been taught to make herself small and invisible for 12 years. Absolutely not, Grace said immediately. It's too dangerous. Maya's eyes, Grace's eyes, the same warm brown that could go ice cold, flashed with anger. You don't get to tell me what to do. You're not my mother. My mother is. Grace's voice stayed gentle but firm even as her heart broke. Your mother tried to kill me. Your mother has been poisoning your skin for 12 years. Your mother is the reason 30 people are dying right now. Maya's hands flew to her face again, touching the pale skin that had been chemically altered since she was old enough to remember. She loves me. She takes care of me. The treatments are for my condition. What condition, Jajia? Jae-hoon's voice was quiet. My skin disease. The doctor said I'd get very sick without the treatments, that my skin would get darker and it would mean the disease was spreading. Jae-hoon's medic, who'd been monitoring the unconscious agents, looked up sharply. Maya, can I examine your arms? Maya hesitated, then slowly pushed up her cardigan sleeves. Her forearms were covered in small injection sites, some fresh, some scarred over. The medic studied them, his professional mask slipping to show disgust. These are injection sites for hydroquinone and glutathione, industrial-grade skin-lightening chemicals. You've been receiving them weekly for... He looked at the scar patterns, the layers of damage. Years. At least 8 years, maybe longer. Maya's voice was very small. No, it's medicine. For my disease. The medic's voice was gentle. There is no disease, Maya. You're perfectly healthy. Someone has been bleaching your skin. Maya looked down at her pale arms, then across the room at Grace's deep brown skin. The realization dawned slowly, horror and understanding spreading across her young face. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. She was changing me? Grace wanted to go to her. Wanted to wrap her daughter in her arms and tell her she was beautiful. That she'd always been beautiful. That the color of her skin, whatever color it was, naturally was perfect. But her body was failing, and Maya wasn't ready. And there were 30 people dying on the floor. We need to move, Jae-hoon said, making the decision for all of them. Grace, Maya, you're with me. Everyone else stay here and monitor the agents. If their conditions worsen, call me immediately. They left through the restaurant's back entrance. Jae-hoon's car was a black sedan with tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screamed money and power while trying to look inconspicuous. Jae-hoon drove, Grace took the passenger seat, and Maya climbed into the back. The drive through Seoul's late-night streets was silent for the first few minutes. Grace watched the city pass by the neon signs in Hangul. She still couldn't read fluently, the few people still out at nearly 1 in the morning. The mixture of traditional and ultra-modern architecture that made Seoul feel like a city caught between times. Maya's voice broke the silence, quiet and hesitant. Are you really my mother? Grace turned as much as she could in her seat, her thick body not designed for the sedan's tight spaces. Yes. Then why did you leave me? The question Grace had been dreading. I didn't leave you, baby. She stole you, and she tried to kill me so I couldn't come back. Don't call me baby. Maya's voice cracked. You don't know me. Grace felt the truth of that like a knife between her ribs. You're right, I don't. But I've thought about you every single day for 12 years. If you wanted me so much, why did you give me away? How did you explain to a 12-year-old the kind of desperation that made you sell your body's ability to grow another human? How did you make her understand poverty and medical bills and the belief wrong, so wrong that giving her to a wealthy family was the loving choice? I was poor, alone, broken from my time in the military. Grace's voice was steady, but tears ran down her full cheeks. I thought giving you to a wealthy family who could give you everything was love. I was wrong. You were wrong? Maya's voice rose. You were wrong? You gave me to a woman who's been poisoning me, who tried to murder you, who her voice broke into sobs. Jae-hoon interrupted, his voice cutting through the emotion with practical urgency. We're here. The medical building rose before them, all glass and steel and modern architecture that spoke of money and discretion. Dr. Yoon's clinic occupied the entire 4th floor of the upscale structure. At nearly 1:30 in the morning, the building should have been empty, locked down, security patrolling. Instead, the front entrance stood open, lights spilling out onto the street like an invitation. Jae-hoon parked but didn't immediately get out. His hands rested on the steering wheel, and Grace could see him thinking, calculating. 12 years in the Korean Mafia had taught him to recognize traps. This is wrong, Grace said, voicing what they were all thinking. Stay behind me. Jae-hoon opened his door, one hand already reaching inside his suit jacket. Grace caught a glimpse of a holstered weapon before he adjusted his posture to conceal it. They entered the building together. The lobby was pristine, all marble floors and minimalist furniture. The elevator waited for them, doors already open. Jae-hoon pressed the button for the 4th floor, and they rode up in silence. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway that was too quiet, too empty. Grace's military training screamed warnings. Every instinct she'd honed over years of service said to turn around, get out, find another way. But 30 federal agents were dying, and her own body was following them into death, and her daughter was standing beside her, looking at her like a stranger she wasn't sure she could trust. They moved through the hallway. Jae-hoon leading, Grace in the middle despite her damaged hands, Maya behind them both. The clinic's main examination room door stood ajar. Inside, on the examination table sat a briefcase. Jae-hoon approached it slowly, his weapon drawn now. He opened the briefcase with careful fingers. Inside, nestled in foam padding, were 32 vials of clear liquid, each labeled with medical coding Grace didn't understand but could guess at. "It's too easy," Grace said. The words had barely left her mouth when the doors slammed shut with a heavy mechanical thunk. Electromagnetic locks, Grace realized. The kind that couldn't be picked or forced without serious equipment. Then gas started venting from the air ducts with a soft hiss. Min-Jee's voice came through hidden speakers, and Grace could hear the smile in it. "Welcome to your judgment, Grace." Jae-hoon rushed to the doors, trying handles that wouldn't budge. He raised his weapon and fired 3 shots at the bulletproof glass. The bullets left white stars but didn't penetrate. Grace recognized the smell immediately, the same sharp, chemical scent that had coated her needle. It's the same toxin, aerosolized. They had maybe 90 seconds before unconsciousness. Maybe 3 minutes before the neurotoxin in the gas reached lethal concentrations in their bloodstreams. Maya started coughing, her thin body doubling over. Her lungs were smaller, her body weight lower. She'd be affected fastest. Grace's military medical training cut through the panic. She couldn't use her hands, but she still knew pressure points, still knew how to manipulate the human nervous system. It was the same knowledge that had let her take down 30 operatives, and now she'd use it to save her daughter. "Hold Maya still," Grace commanded Jae-hoon. He didn't question, just wrapped his arms around Maya, supporting her weight as her legs gave out. Grace positioned herself, using her elbow since her hands wouldn't cooperate. She found the pressure point on Maya's neck, the carotid sinus, and applied precise pressure with the point of her elbow. Maya's eyes rolled back and her body went limp in Jae-hoon's arms. "Is she?" Jae-hoon's voice was panicked. "She's alive. I slowed her breathing and heart rate. She'll absorb less of the toxin this way. She'll survive." Grace was already swaying, the gas affecting her. "You find a way out, save her." Grace's legs gave out. She collapsed to the floor, her soft body hitting the tiles hard. The gas was heavier than air, settling low, and down here it was concentrated. She could feel her respiratory system starting to shut down, her damaged nervous system unable to fight the additional assault. Jae-hoon was weakening too, but he dragged both Grace and Maya toward the corner farthest from the vents. His movements were getting sluggish, uncoordinated. He spotted a ventilation grate low on the wall and used his belt buckle to pry it open, his fingers scrabbling at the metal. Behind the grate was drywall. Jae-hoon punched through it, his fist breaking through the material only to reveal concrete behind it, a false escape route. Min-Jee had thought of everything. Jae-hoon collapsed next to them, his lean body folding gracefully even in unconsciousness. The expensive watch on his wrist showed 1:47 a.m. as his eyes closed. Grace's last thought before darkness took her was that she'd failed. Failed Maya, failed the agents, failed everyone. 60 seconds passed. The gas stopped venting. The electromagnetic locks on the door beeped and released with a click. Dr. Han Yoon entered wearing a full gas mask, his 65-year-old frame moving with nervous energy. He was sweating despite the cool air, his hands shaking as he checked their pulses. All 3 were alive, barely. He stood there for a long moment, staring down at them, at the Mafia boss who employed him, at the black woman who'd poisoned 30 federal agents, at the child caught between them. "She said to leave them here to die," he muttered to himself in Korean, his voice muffled by the mask. "But I can't, not the child." He made his decision. Dr. Yoon pulled 3 vials from the briefcase and loaded them into auto-injectors. He administered them in order: Maya first, then Grace, then Jae-hoon. 3 of the 32 doses, used to save the people Min-Jee had wanted dead. He dragged them one by one into the hallway, away from the residual gas in the examination room. It took all his strength. He was old, and they were heavy, especially Grace's solid weight, but he managed it. Then Dr. Yoon grabbed the briefcase with the remaining 29 doses and ran. Grace woke first. Military training had taught her body to fight through unconsciousness, to claw back to awareness even when it would be easier to stay under. She was in a hallway, sterile and bright. Jae-hoon lay a few feet away, still unconscious but breathing steadily. Maya was closer, curled on her side. Grace's hands felt different, better. The antidote was working on her chronic exposure, reversing some of the damage. She could move her fingers now, though they were still weak, still trembling. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had an hour ago. Maya woke second, gasping and sitting up so fast she nearly hit her head on the wall. Her eyes were wild, unfocused, and then they landed on Grace leaning over her. You saved me." Maya's voice was small, confused. "Always," Grace said simply. Maya's face crumpled and tears started streaming down her chemically lightened cheeks. "Min-Jee tried to kill us. She really tried to." Grace wanted to hold her, wanted to pull Maya into her arms and promise that everything would be okay, but she held back, letting Maya process, letting her daughter come to her own conclusions. Jae-hoon woke with a sharp intake of breath, his body going tense and alert immediately. "Where's Dr. Yoon?" They searched the clinic. Dr. Yoon was gone, but he'd left something behind, a handwritten note on clinic letterhead, the writing shaky but legible. Grace read it aloud. "Min-Jee forced me to help her. I couldn't let the child die. The antidote briefcase is at my home address." She read out an address in Itaewon. "Min-Jee is fleeing to Incheon Airport private terminal. Flight to Beijing leaves at 8:00 a.m. She has 75 million embezzled from your accounts, Jae-hoon." "I'm sorry, Dr. Yoon." Jae-hoon checked his watch. "It's 1:52 a.m. We have 6 hours and 8 minutes to get the antidote to the agents." Grace's tactical mind was already working through the options. Incheon Airport is 90 minutes from here, maybe more with traffic. If we go after Min-Jee, we risk the agents dying. Dr. Yoon's home is 20 minutes away. Jae-hoon was already pulling out his phone. "I'll send my team to retrieve the briefcase. We go after Min-Jee." "Why?" Grace asked, genuinely curious. "The antidote is what matters. Min-Jee's already beaten. She'll be arrested eventually." Jae-hoon's face went cold, his controlled demeanor giving way to something harder underneath. "She stole $75 million from me. She lied to me for 12 years about you, about Maya, about everything. She tried to kill my daughter. She tried to kill you." His voice dropped lower. "I want her to face justice, real justice. She's still my mom." Maya's quiet voice cut through their planning. Both adults turned to look at her. She was standing now, her thin arms wrapped around herself, her young face trying to process things no 12-year-old should have to understand. "I know she's bad," Maya continued, her voice breaking. "I know she hurt people. She hurt you. She's been hurting me. But she raised me. She tucked me in at night. She helped with my homework. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. "She loved me, didn't she?" Grace moved closer, slowly, telegraphing her movements so Maya could pull away if she wanted. "I don't know, baby. Maybe she did in her own broken way. Sometimes people can love someone and still hurt them. It doesn't make the hurt okay." "Don't call me baby," Maya said, but there was less venom in it this time. Jae-hoon made the decision. "We split up. Grace, you and Maya get the antidote from Dr. Yoon's house. Bring it back to the restaurant. I go after Min-Jee." "You can't face her alone," Grace protested. Jae-hoon's smile was cold and didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not the one with broken hands. You get the antidote and save those agents. I'll handle my wife." There was a finality to his tone that suggested arguing would be pointless. Jae-hoon was used to being obeyed, and Grace was running out of time and energy to fight him on every point. "Fine. But if she kills you, I'm going to be very annoyed." Jae-hoon's cold smile softened slightly. "Noted." They split up in the parking lot. Jae-hoon headed for his sedan, already making calls to his security team. Grace and Maya caught a taxi safer than trying to commandeer a vehicle with hands that barely worked. The taxi driver was an older Korean man who took one look at Grace's battered face and Maya's tear-stained cheeks and wisely asked no questions. Grace gave him the address in broken Korean, and they pulled into Seoul's early morning traffic. It was 2:10 a.m. The streets were mostly empty, just a few late-night workers and early morning commuters. Neon signs reflected off wet pavement from an earlier rain Grace hadn't noticed. The city looked different at this hour, softer somehow, less frantic. Maya sat as far from Grace as the back seat allowed. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 12 years of separation, and 6 months of lies, and one night of violence that had shattered everything Maya thought she knew about her life. Finally, Maya spoke. "Do I look like you?" Grace turned in the front seat, surprised by the question. "What? I don't know what I'm supposed to look like." Maya's hands touched her face, her pale arms, as if she was seeing herself for the first time. "All my life I've looked in mirrors and seen this." She gestured to her chemically lightened skin. "But it's fake. So what do I really look like?" Grace pulled out her phone with clumsy fingers. She scrolled through photos until she found the one she'd saved, pictures of her family. Her mother, her father, her sisters, her nephew. All black, all smiling, all the family Maya had never known existed. She held the phone so Maya could see. "This is my mother, your grandmother, and that's my father, your grandfather. He passed away 2 years ago. These are my sisters, your aunts, and this little one is your cousin Marcus. He's 7. Maya stared at the photos, her eyes moving from face to face. "They're my family? If you want them to be." Maya's voice was very small. "What if they don't want me?" Grace felt her heart break. Baby Maya, they've been waiting to meet you since the day I found out you were alive. My mother cried for a week when I told her. She's been praying for you every day. Do they know that I look like this? They know Min-Jee altered your appearance. They don't care. Your family. Maya was quiet for a long moment, still staring at the photos. I'm black? Half black? Yes. What does that mean? It was such a simple question with such a complicated answer. How did you explain to a child raised in Korea, raised to be ashamed of half her heritage, what it meant to be black, especially when Grace herself was still figuring out what it meant to be a black woman in Seoul, navigating racism she didn't always catch because of the language barrier? It means you're part of a community that survived everything thrown at it and come out stronger, Grace said carefully. It means you have a history of people who fought for their dignity, their freedom, their right to exist exactly as they are. It means you're beautiful. Maya's laugh was bitter, too cynical for 12. Min-Jee said being dark was ugly, that people would hate me, that I needed to be fixed. Min-Jee was wrong and hateful and scared. Scared of what? Grace chose her words carefully. Scared that she couldn't control what people would think. Scared that you'd face racism and she couldn't protect you from it. So instead of teaching you to be strong, to be proud, she tried to erase you. Will people hate me here? In Korea? Grace wouldn't lie to her. Some will. Korea has its problems with racism, just like America does, just like everywhere does. Some people will see your skin, your real skin, when it comes back and make assumptions. They'll be wrong, but that won't stop them. Will people hate me in America? Some will. But you'll also find people who love you, who see you and celebrate you exactly as you are. Maya looked out the window at Seoul passing by. I've never left this city. Min-Jee said it wasn't safe, that people outside would hurt me. She was controlling you, isolating you, making you dependent on her. Will you take me away from here? Grace had thought about this question for 4 years. Do you want to leave? Maya's voice was uncertain, scared. I don't know. This is my home. Seoul is all I've ever known. My school is here. My room is here. Everything I know is here. But, she trailed off. But it doesn't feel like home anymore, Grace finished for her. No, it doesn't. The taxi pulled up to an apartment building in Itaewon, the district known for its international flavor. Dr. Yoon's address was in a luxury high-rise, the kind of place that suggested his black market medical practice paid very well. Grace paid the driver with bills from her pocket, her fingers still clumsy but functional. They approached the building entrance. The door was open, not ajar, but standing wide open, like someone had left in a hurry and forgotten to close it. Stay behind me, Grace said. They entered the building and took the elevator to the 8th floor. Dr. Yoon's apartment door was also open. Grace felt her stomach drop even before they went inside. The apartment had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers emptied, papers scattered everywhere. Signs of a struggle, a broken lamp, a smear of blood on the wall. And in the living room, Dr. Han Yoon's body, Maya screamed. Grace moved on instinct, positioning herself between Maya and the corpse, using her soft body as a shield. Don't look, baby. But Maya had already seen. Dr. Yoon lay on his back, 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. The blood pool beneath him was still spreading slowly, which meant this had happened recently. Very recently. The briefcase was gone. Grace pulled Maya away from the living room, guiding her into the hallway. The girl was shaking, her thin body trembling violently as she tried to process seeing a dead body for the first time. Grace wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but there was no time for trauma processing. Not yet. Stay here. Don't move. Grace's voice was firm but gentle. She returned to the apartment alone, her damaged hands already reaching for her phone. She had to search the place, had to find any clue about where Min-Jee had gone or what her next move was. The antidote was gone, and with it, the lives of 30 federal agents. Grace found Dr. Yoon's phone on the kitchen counter. The screen was cracked but still functional. She scrolled through recent messages with clumsy fingers, her heart sinking with each line she read. The last text conversation was time-stamped 23 minutes ago. Dr. Yoon, I have the antidote. Meeting you at the airport. Please don't hurt my family. Min-Jee, your family is already dead. You should have obeyed me. Grace felt bile rise in her throat. She kept scrolling, found an earlier message from Min-Jee. Min-Jee, bring the briefcase to Incheon Airport Private Terminal 7. Come alone. If you involve anyone else, your wife and daughter die. Dr. Yoon had tried to save his family by cooperating. Min-Jee had killed him anyway. Grace called Jae-hoon. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Either he was in a situation where he couldn't answer or something had happened to him. Damit. She took photos of the text messages with her own phone, then pocketed Dr. Yoon's device. Evidence. The police would need it eventually. Grace returned to the hallway where Maya stood pressed against the wall, her eyes squeezed shut. We need to go. Now. Where? Incheon Airport. Min-Jee killed Dr. Yoon and took the antidote. She's meeting someone at the private terminal. They ran for the elevator. Grace's body protested, every movement, broken ribs grinding, poison still working through her system despite the antidote dose, exhaustion pulling at her like weights. But she pushed through it. 30 lives depended on getting that briefcase. They caught another taxi outside. This driver was younger, a woman in her 30s who looked alarmed at Grace's appearance but started driving when Grace gave the destination. Incheon Airport. Private terminals. As fast as you can, please. The drive would take 90 minutes minimum, even at this hour with light traffic. Grace checked the time, 2:35 a.m. The agents had been exposed at 11:52 p.m. That meant the 8-hour deadline would hit at 7:52 a.m. They had 5 hours and 17 minutes. If they could get the antidote and get back to Gangnam in time, if Min-Jee didn't destroy the doses, if Jae-hoon was still alive to help them, too many ifs. In the back seat, Maya finally spoke. Her voice was small, traumatized. Is Dr. Yoon the first dead person you've seen? Grace turned in her seat. No. How many? Too many. Grace paused, then decided Maya deserved honesty. I was in the military. I served in combat zones. I've seen people die. I've killed people. Maya's eyes widened. You killed people? Yes, in war. When it was them or my unit. When there was no other choice. Grace held Maya's gaze. I'm not proud of it, but I don't regret it either. Those deaths meant my people lived. Like tonight, with the agents. You were trying to protect me, yes. But you killed them anyway. Maya's voice broke. They're dying because of you. The accusation hit harder than any of the punches Grace had taken tonight. I know. How do you live with that? Grace turned back to face forward, staring out at Seoul's streets transforming into highway. I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow if we're both still alive. They fell into silence. The taxi driver kept glancing at them in the rearview mirror, clearly curious but professional enough not to ask questions. Korean pop music played softly on the radio, incongruously cheerful. Maya broke the silence again. Why did Min-Jee hate you so much? Grace had been waiting for this question. Because I'm black, and you're half black, and she couldn't accept that. Is it bad, being black? The question cut Grace to the core. This was what Min-Jee had done, made Maya afraid of her own heritage, made her think there was something wrong with the DNA Grace had given her. No, baby, it's beautiful. Being black is beautiful, but some people have hate in their hearts, and that hate makes them do terrible things. Do people in Korea hate black people? Grace had spent 6 months in Seoul navigating this exact question. She'd experienced the stares, the people who'd moved away from her on the subway, the restaurants that suddenly had no available tables. She'd also experienced kindness from strangers, curiosity that was genuine rather than hostile, people who'd gone out of their way to help her despite the language barrier. Some do, not all. Korea has complicated feelings about race just like everywhere. There's racism here, yes, but there are also good people who see you as a person first. Will they hate me? Some might, but that's their problem, not yours. You can't control what's in other people's hearts. You can only control how you see yourself. Maya looked down at her pale hands, the hands that should have been several shades darker naturally. I don't know how I see myself anymore. I thought I knew who I was. Maya Park, Korean. Daughter of Jae-hoon and Min-Jee Park. Good student, piano player. Now I don't know anything. You're still all those things, Grace said gently. You're just also more than you thought you were. You're Korean and black and American. You're Maya Park and you're my daughter. You can be everything at once. How do I learn to be black? I don't know anything about it. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. We'll figure it out together. I'll teach you what I know. We'll find community. We'll learn about the history, the culture, the music, the food, all of it. And we'll make mistakes because I don't have all the answers either. Will you take me to America? Do you want to go? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know what I want. I'm scared. That's okay. Being scared is okay. We'll take it slow. The taxi merged onto the airport expressway. The city was falling away behind them, replaced by industrial zones and then stretches of darkness broken by highway lights. Grace checked the time again, 3:15 a.m. 4 hours and 37 minutes remaining. Her phone rang. Ji-hoon, where are you? Grace demanded. Ji-hoon's voice was tight with pain. Airport, private terminal, Min-Jee's here. She has the antidote and she has 4 bodyguards with her. I tried to get close, but... He paused and Grace heard him grunt. I've been shot. How bad? Shoulder. I'll live, but I can't get to her alone. She's boarding a private jet in Hangar 7. We're 45 minutes out. Can you stall her? I'll try. Grace, be careful. She's not running scared. She's in control. This is all going exactly how she planned. The call ended. Grace looked back at Maya. Your father's been shot. Maya's face went pale. Is he? He's alive, but we need to move fast. The taxi driver had been listening. There was no way not to in the enclosed space. She spoke in heavily accented English. I go faster. Hold on. The car accelerated, weaving through the sparse traffic with practiced ease. The driver was skilled, Grace noticed. She handled the vehicle like someone who'd done time as a courier, or maybe had a past that required knowing how to drive fast when it mattered. They reached Incheon Airport at 3:52 a.m. The main terminals were just starting to wake up. Early flights meant early travelers. But the private terminal was separate, a discreet facility for the wealthy who didn't want to mix with commercial passengers. Grace paid the driver, adding an extra $100 in one for the speed and the discretion. The woman looked at the money, then at Grace's battered face and Maya's frightened eyes. You need help? She asked. We'll manage, thank you. They approached the security gate to the private terminal. A guard stood at the barrier, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. He looked at Grace, taking in her disheveled appearance, her visible injuries, her dark skin, and his expression hardened. He spoke in Korean, his tone dismissive. Grace caught enough to understand he was denying them entry. Maya stepped forward, her voice suddenly sharp and commanding in a way Grace had never heard before. She spoke rapid Korean, and Grace recognized Ji-hoon's name, heard the authority in Maya's young voice. The guard's expression changed to uncertainty. He radioed someone, presumably to verify. The response came back and his face went pale. He started apologizing profusely. What did you tell him? Grace asked. That I'm Ji-hoon Park's daughter, and if he didn't let us through, I'd have my father fire his entire family. Maya's voice was flat. Min-Jee taught me how to use our name as a weapon. The guard waved them through, but as they passed, his radio crackled. A voice speaking Korean, urgent and panicked. The guard's eyes widened. What? Grace demanded. Shots fired. Hangar 7. They're saying there's an active shooter situation. Grace grabbed Maya's hand and ran. The private terminal was a maze of hangars and service roads. They followed the sound of alarms and shouting. Hangar 7's massive door stood open, smoke billowing out into the pre-dawn darkness. Grace pulled Maya behind a service vehicle. Stay here. Don't move until I come back for you. No, I'm coming with you. Maya, she's my mother too. I need to see this. Grace wanted to argue, wanted to protect Maya from more violence and trauma. But there was no time, and maybe Maya was right. Maybe she needed to see who Min-Jee really was, needed to witness this final confrontation to truly understand what she'd been saved from. Stay behind me. If I tell you to run, you run. Understand? Maya nodded. They entered the hangar. The scene inside looked like a war zone. Ji-hoon lay on the concrete floor near the entrance, his expensive suit jacket dark with blood spreading from his shoulder wound. 4 bodyguards in tactical gear stood around him, weapons drawn, and on the stairs leading up to a sleek private jet holding the briefcase stood Min-Jee. She looked exactly as Grace remembered from 12 years ago, but somehow worse. The cosmetic surgery had frozen her face into something uncanny, and her designer clothes hung on a frame so thin it looked skeletal. But her eyes were fully alive with triumph and malice. Min-Jee saw them enter and smiled. There's my daughter, and the woman who won't die. Maya made a sound, half sob, half gasp, seeing her father bleeding on the ground. Grace stepped forward, putting herself between Maya and the bodyguards. Her damaged hands were trembling, but she kept her voice steady. It's over, Min-Jee. Give us the antidote. Or what? Min-Jee's laugh was musical and horrible. You can barely stand. Your hands are useless. You have nothing. I have her. Grace gestured to Maya. Min-Jee's smile faltered for just a moment before returning harder. You have a confused child who doesn't even know what she is anymore. She'll never be yours. Maya stepped out from behind Grace. Her thin body was shaking, but she held herself straight, meeting Min-Jee's eyes across the hangar. I know exactly what I am. I'm the daughter you tried to erase. The hangar went silent. Even the bodyguard shifted uncomfortably. Min-Jee's perfect mask cracked. Rage twisted her surgically enhanced features into something grotesque. "You ungrateful little after everything I did for you. I saved you from being a mongrel. I made you beautiful. I made you acceptable. You poisoned me." Maya's voice broke. "You made me hate myself without even knowing why. I loved you," Min-Jee screamed, and for the first time Grace heard something real in her voice. Pain. Actual pain. "I did love you. But every time I looked at you I saw her. I saw that black woman who contaminated you, who ruined you, and I couldn't die, couldn't." She couldn't finish. Her composure shattered completely, tears streaming down her frozen face, making her makeup run in dark streaks. Grace almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Min-Jee recovered quickly, wiping her face, her expression hardening back into cold control. "Kill them. Kill them all." The 4 bodyguards raised their weapons. Grace's hands were useless, her body was breaking down, and she had no weapon except the single acupuncture needle still tucked behind her ear. 4 armed professionals against 1 dying woman and a terrified child. But Grace Chen hadn't survived combat zones and 12 years of grief by giving up when the odds looked bad. She pulled the needle and moved. Grace's body moved on pure instinct and years of training that had become muscle memory. The first bodyguard advanced, his weapon trained on her center mass. Grace dropped into a crouch, her thick thighs providing the stability to move low and fast, and kicked a wrench that had been left on the hangar floor. It flew into his knee with a sickening crack. He stumbled and Grace was already inside his guard. She drove her elbow into his solar plexus, using the point of her joint since her hands couldn't grip properly. As he doubled over, gasping, she struck the pressure point behind his ear with the needle. He collapsed. 1 down, 3 to go. The second bodyguard fired. The shot went wide. Grace had already rolled to the side, using her body's momentum and low center of gravity to move in ways he didn't expect from someone her size. She came up near the jet's landing gear and grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall mount. She couldn't grip it properly, so she trapped it between her forearm and body, then kicked the pin free. White foam exploded out, filling the air between her and the second bodyguard. He fired blind through the cloud. Grace threw the canister at him. It struck his weapon hand and the gun went flying. Grace emerged from the foam cloud and struck. Her knee found his groin, her elbow found his temple, and the needle found the nerve cluster in his neck. He went down hard. 2 down. The third bodyguard had learned. He kept his distance, circling, looking for an opening. Grace's breathing was labored, now broken ribs screaming with every movement, poison still working through her system despite the antidote dose. She was running on fumes and determination. Behind her, she heard Maya scream, "Dad, stay with me." The distraction cost Grace. The third bodyguard lunged, getting inside her guard. His fist connected with her already broken ribs, and Grace felt something give way inside her chest. She gasped, tasting blood, and fell to one knee. He raised his weapon, pointing it at her head. Maya threw something. Grace didn't see what, maybe a tool from a nearby workbench. It hit the bodyguard's wrist just as he fired. The shot went into the concrete floor instead of Grace's skull. Grace drove upward with the last of her strength, her shoulder ramming into his midsection. They crashed into the jet stairs together. Grace's damaged hands were useless for grappling, so she used her teeth biting down on his wrist until he dropped the weapon. Then she found the pressure point in his armpit with the needle, and he collapsed on top of her. Grace shoved his unconscious weight off and struggled to her feet. 3 down, 1 to go. The fourth bodyguard had been hanging back, smarter than his companions. Now he moved forward, weapon trained on Grace. But his eyes kept flickering to Maya, calculating whether to take out the child first or the wounded woman. Jae-hoon made his choice for him. Despite the bullet wound in his shoulder, despite the blood loss, Jae-hoon launched himself from the floor. His lean body crashed into the bodyguard from the side, tackling him. They hit the ground together, struggling for the weapon. A gunshot rang out. Both men went still. Maya screamed, "Dad." Jae-hoon rolled off the bodyguard. The fourth guard lay still, bleeding from a chest wound. The gun had fired between them, and he'd taken the bullet. Jae-hoon clutched his abdomen, where a new wound was bleeding freely. The shot had gone through the bodyguard and into him. "Jae-hoon!" Grace crawled toward him, her body barely responding anymore. He looked up at her, his face pale with shock and blood loss. "Gad! De antidoti, sabe? Diayens." Then he passed out. Maya ran to her father, dropping to her knees beside him. She pressed her small hands against his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding like she'd seen in movies. Blood seeped between her fingers, staining her pale skin red. Grace forced herself to stand. All 4 bodyguards were down. Jae-hoon was dying. Maya was traumatized. And Min-Jee stood on the jet stairs, still holding the briefcase, watching the carnage with an expression Grace couldn't read. "Give me the antidote," Grace said, her voice raw. Min-Jee opened the briefcase. For a moment, Grace thought she might actually do it. Then Min-Jee dumped the contents onto the stairs. 29 vials of clear liquid rolled down the metal steps, some shattering on impact with the concrete floor. "No!" Grace lunged forward, trying to catch them. Her damaged hands couldn't grip properly. Vials slipped through her fingers, breaking on the ground. The antidote pooled around her knees, useless, wasted. Min-Jee laughed. The sound echoed through the hangar, high and broken and triumphant. "You've taken everything from me. My perfect life. My perfect daughter. You contaminated her with your filthy bloodline." Grace looked up from the broken vials, her round face streaked with blood and tears. "Say it. Say what you really think. You're black." Min-Jee screamed, her frozen face contorting with rage. "You're disgusting. You're beneath me, and you made my daughter half. What, mother?" Maya's voice cut through the hangar. She'd stood up from Jae-hoon's side, her hands covered in his blood, her young face twisted with pain and fury. "Say it. Finish the sentence." Min-Jee's mask shattered completely. She was crying now, makeup running, carefully maintained composure dissolving. "Maya, Jajia, I didn't mean you don't understand. I was protecting you." "From what?" Maya's voice cracked. "From being who I am? From shame. From being rejected. In Korea, being mixed as people would have." Min-Jee couldn't finish. Her carefully constructed justifications were falling apart under Maya's gaze. Grace dragged herself to her feet, leaving the destroyed antidote behind. Her hands were slick with the wasted medicine, her body was shutting down, and she could taste blood in her mouth from internal injuries. But she wasn't done yet. She started climbing the jet stairs. Min-Jee backed up, still holding the empty briefcase like a shield. "Stay away from me." "You said you loved her," Grace said, climbing step by agonizing step. "Did you? Even a little? Or was she just a possession you wanted to perfect?" "I did love her," Min-Jee's voice broke. "I loved her so much it hurt. But every time I looked at her, I saw you. I saw what you'd done to her, how you'd ruined her, and I had to fix it. I had to make her acceptable." Grace reached the top of the stairs. She and Min-Jee stood face to face, the black woman covered in blood and poison, the Korean woman frozen by surgery and hate. "You can't fix a person," Grace said quietly. "You can only destroy them trying." Min-Jee's hand moved inside her designer jacket. Grace saw the gun too late. Min-Jee pulled it, her skeletal hand shaking but determined. "You should have died 12 years ago," Min-Jee said. Grace smiled, bloody and broken and defiant. "So should you." She headbutted Min-Jee. The gun went off. The bullet grazed Grace's shoulder, burning a line of fire across her flesh. But Grace's momentum carried both of them backward into the jet cabin. They crashed through the doorway, falling onto expensive leather seats. Min-Jee fought like a cornered animal, scratching, biting, going for Grace's eyes. Grace's damaged hands were useless for grappling, so she fought with knees, elbows, her forehead, her teeth. They rolled across the cabin floor in a tangle of limbs and blood and hate. They crashed into the cockpit door. The pilot inside, terrified by the violence, was screaming into his radio for help. "Mrs. Park, we need to abort takeoff," he yelled through the door. The jet's engines were powering up. They'd been running this whole time, Grace realized. Min-Jee had planned to be gone by now, leaving them all to die while she fled to Beijing with $75 million. Min-Jee kicked Grace off her and scrambled to her feet. "TAQFNOW." The pilot, terrified of disobeying, started taxiing the jet. Grace saw the briefcase under one of the seats where it had fallen. She dove for it, her soft body sliding across the expensive carpet. Her damaged fingers closed around the handle. The briefcase was empty, all the vials destroyed. But Min-Jee didn't know that. Grace grabbed it and turned back to the open door. The jet was moving now, picking up speed. 40 miles per hour, 50. The open door showed the hangar sliding past, then the tarmac, then the runway markers. Min-Jee tackled Grace from behind. They both crashed toward the open door, the wind tearing at them. Grace's grip on the briefcase was slipping, her fingers couldn't hold it with the wind and Min-Jee's weight pulling at her. They tumbled out of the jet together. The fall was maybe 8 feet, but at 50 miles per hour it felt like flying and crashing at the same time. Grace hit the tarmac rolling, her soft body absorbing the impact better than it had any right to. The briefcase flew from her hands, skittering across the runway. Min-Jee landed harder, her skeletal frame not built for this kind of punishment. Something cracked ribs, maybe her arm, she screamed. The jet screeched to a halt, the pilot finally hitting the emergency brake. Airport security was converging on the scene, drawn by the alarms and the gunshots. Grace and Min-Jee both staggered to their feet. The briefcase lay between them, 20 feet away. Both women ran for it, limping, broken, desperate. Min-Jee reached it first. She opened it with shaking hands, her frozen face showing confusion. What? We're looking for these? Maya's voice came from behind them. Both women turned. Maya stood there, blood-stained and tear-streaked, holding something Grace couldn't quite see in the pre-dawn darkness. Then Grace realized. Maya was holding vials, intact vials. The ones that hadn't shattered when Min-Jee dumped them on the stairs. Maya had collected them while Grace and Min-Jee fought. How many? Grace asked, her voice hoarse. Maya counted quickly. 7 doses. Not enough. Not nearly enough. They needed 29 doses for the remaining agents plus 1 for Grace. 7 wouldn't save everyone. Grace would have to choose who lived and who died. But 7 was better than 0. Airport security surrounded them, Korean National Police, airport guards, all shouting in Korean. Grace raised her damaged hands in surrender. Min-Jee did the same, her perfect mask finally truly broken. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Stand down, federal agents. Agent Marcus Cole appeared, leaning heavily on another agent for support. He was pale, sweating, clearly in pain from the poison still in his system, but he was conscious and moving. How? Grace started. Your boy Jae-hoon sent his people to get us, Agent Cole said, his breathing labored. Got us to the hospital. They had 3 doses of antidote. Gave them to the 3 agents in worse condition. Bought us some time. He looked at the vials in Maya's hands. That's not enough, though. I know. Grace's voice broke. I'm sorry. I tried. Grace. Agent Cole's hand on her shoulder stopped her spiral. You saved 3. That's 3 people who'd be dead without you. We'll figure out the rest. How much time? An hour, maybe less. Korean National Police were already moving on Min-Jee, reading her rights in Korean, zip-tying her hands. She didn't resist. All the fight had gone out of her, leaving just a broken woman in expensive clothes who'd destroyed everything she touched. As they led her away, Min-Jee looked back at Maya one last time. I'm your mother. I raised you. You owe me. Maya's voice was steady, final, devastating in its simplicity. You're not my mother. You never were. Min-Jee's scream of anguish echoed across the tarmac as they forced her into a police vehicle. Grace collapsed. Her body had finally reached its limit. The poison, the injuries, the exhaustion, everything caught up at once. The world tilted and grayed out. She felt Maya's small hands catching her. Grace? Giare, see. The antidote, Grace managed. Give it to the agents. All 7 doses. Save who you can. What about you? Grace smiled up at her daughter. I got what I came for. I got you. Her eyes closed. She heard Maya screaming for medics, heard the chaos of emergency responders flooding the scene. The last thing she felt before darkness took her was Maya's hand holding hers, refusing to let go, just like Grace had refused to let go for 12 years. Grace woke in a hospital bed. The ceiling was white, sterile, and unfamiliar. Medical equipment beeped steadily beside her, monitoring vital signs she couldn't interpret. Her body felt distant, disconnected, like it belonged to someone else. The pain was there but muted, filtered through what had to be serious painkillers. She tried to move her hands. They responded barely. Her fingers twitched, but the fine motor control was gone. The chronic poison exposure had done permanent damage that even the antidote couldn't fully reverse. You're awake, Grace turned her head. The movement sent a spike of pain through her neck, but she pushed through it. Maya sat in a chair beside the bed, looking small and exhausted. The girl's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, her chemically lightened skin blotchy. She was still wearing the blood-stained clothes from the airport. How long? Grace's voice came out as a croak. 8 hours. It's almost noon. Maya's voice was flat, emotionally exhausted. They said you almost died. Again. Apparently you keep doing that. Grace managed a weak smile. Bad habit. It's not funny. I know, I'm sorry. Maya looked down at her hands still stained with Jae-hoon's blood under her fingernails despite obvious attempts to wash them. Dad's in surgery. They had to remove the bullet, repair internal bleeding. The doctors say he'll probably live, but her voice cracked. What if he doesn't? He will. Your father is too stubborn to die. You don't know that. Grace couldn't argue with that. She didn't know Jae-hoon well enough to make promises about his survival. All she could offer was hope, and hope felt insufficient in the harsh fluorescent lighting of a hospital room. The agents? Grace asked, though she dreaded the answer. Maya's expression shifted to something complicated, relief mixed with grief. 7 survived, the ones who got the antidote doses I collected. The other, she swallowed hard, the other 23 died at 7:52 a.m., exactly 8 hours after exposure. The doctor said their nervous systems just stopped. 23 dead. 23 federal agents who'd been doing their jobs, trying to arrest a criminal, and Grace had killed them with a needle she'd thought was safe. Agent Cole? Grace whispered. Alive. He was one of the 3 Jae-hoon's people gave antidote to early. He's down the hall, stable. Maya paused. He wants to talk to you. He said there are going to be charges for the agents who died. Of course there were. Grace had killed 23 federal agents. That she'd been manipulated. That she'd thought she was protecting her daughter. That she'd been poisoning herself unknowingly. None of that changed the body count. I understand, Grace said quietly. The door opened. A man in a suit entered, Korean, mid-40s, carrying himself with the authority of someone used to being in charge. He had a translator with him, a young woman who looked nervous. Ms. Chen, I'm Prosecutor Park Sung-min with the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office. I need to inform you of the charges being brought against you. Grace nodded, bracing herself. The prosecutor spoke in Korean, the translator converting his words. You're being charged with involuntary manslaughter of 23 federal agents, assault with a deadly weapon, possession of illegal chemical weapons, and reckless endangerment. He paused. However, given the circumstances that you were manipulated by Min-Jee Park, that you believed you were acting in self-defense, and that you ultimately cooperated to save the surviving agents, we're prepared to offer a deal. What kind of deal? Plead a reckless endangerment and illegal weapons possession. 2 years probation, 500 hours community service. You'll be deported to the United States immediately upon medical clearance. Maya made a sound, small, hurt, desperate. No, you can't. The prosecutor continued as if Maya hadn't spoken. Alternatively, you can petition for asylum in South Korea based on the documented attempt on your life 12 years ago, and Min-Jee Park's continued persecution. If granted, you can remain in Korea under supervised probation. The criminal charges would still apply, but you wouldn't be deported. Grace looked at Maya. The girl's eyes were wide, pleading, terrified. In the past 12 hours, Maya had lost the only mother she'd ever known to arrest and revelation, nearly lost her father to bullets and blood loss, and watched 23 people die from poison Grace had administered. The last thing Maya needed was to lose Grace too. I'll petition for asylum, Grace said. The prosecutor nodded. The process will take several weeks. You'll remain in hospital custody until then, followed by house arrest pending the asylum hearing. He set down papers on the bedside table. A U.S. federal prosecutor will also want to speak with you regarding the American agents who died. I understand. He left with his translator. Maya immediately burst into tears, her thin body shaking with sobs she'd been holding back during the official conversation. I thought they were going to take you away. I thought. Grace wanted to hold her, wanted to pull Maya into her arms and promise everything would be okay. But her body wouldn't cooperate. And truthfully, she didn't know if everything would be okay. She was facing serious criminal charges. 23 people were dead because of her. Jae-hoon was in surgery with uncertain outcomes, and Maya's entire world had been shattered in one violent night. Come here, Grace said softly. Maya hesitated, then climbed carefully onto the hospital bed, avoiding the IV lines and monitor wires. She curled into Grace's side, her head on Grace's shoulder, and cried. Grace wrapped her damaged arms around her daughter, the embrace clumsy, because her hands wouldn't work right, but genuine. I've got you, Grace whispered. I've got you, baby. This time Maya didn't correct her about the nickname. They stayed like that until Maya's sobs quieted to sniffles, then to exhausted silence. Grace thought Maya might have fallen asleep when the girl spoke again, her voice muffled against Grace's hospital gown. Min-Jee used to hold me when I cried. She'd stroke my hair and tell me everything would be perfect, that I was perfect. Maya paused. But she was lying the whole time, wasn't she? About everything? Grace chose her words carefully. I think she believed what she was saying. In her twisted way, she thought she was helping you, making you acceptable, protecting you from racism, giving you opportunities. Grace took a breath. But yes, she was lying. To you and to herself. Do you think she really loved me? It was the question Maya had asked before, and it still didn't have a simple answer. Grace thought about Min-Jee's breakdown at the airport, the pain in her voice when she'd screamed about loving Maya. The tears had been real, even if the methods had been monstrous. "I think she loved the idea of you," Grace said finally, "the perfect daughter she could shape and control. But she didn't love the real you, the you that's Korean and black and American and everything at once. She tried to erase parts of you to make you fit her vision. That's not love, that's possession." Maya was quiet for a long time. What's real love supposed to be like? Grace thought about her own mother, about the way she'd been raised to believe she was enough exactly as she was, about unconditional acceptance and support even when she made mistakes, about being seen, truly seen and loved anyway. Real love means accepting someone completely. It means wanting them to be their fullest, truest self, even if that self is different from what you imagined. It means protecting them, yes, but not by changing who they are, by teaching them to be strong in who they are. "Is that how you love me?" Grace's throat tightened. "I'm trying to. I don't know you well enough yet to love all of you. We've only really known each other for 12 hours. But I love who you're showing me you are. And I want to know the rest. All of it. The good parts and the hard parts and everything in between." Maya lifted her head to look at Grace. "What if I'm not what you imagined? What if I'm difficult or mean or I hate you sometimes? Then you'll be a normal 12-year-old and I'll love you anyway. What if I can't be American enough or black enough? What if I don't fit anywhere?" Grace's damaged hand reached up to touch Maya's face, her trembling fingers gentle against her daughter's chemically altered skin. "Then we'll make a place where you fit. You and me and your father, if he survives. We'll build something new." A nurse entered to check Grace's vitals, breaking the moment. She spoke rapid Korean to Maya, who responded. The nurse looked at the two of them curled together on the hospital bed and smiled softly before leaving. She said, "Visiting hours are over soon," Maya translated. "But she'll let me stay if I don't disturb your rest." "Stay," Grace said immediately. "Please stay." Maya settled back against Grace's side. "I don't have anywhere else to go anyway. The police have our house as a crime scene. All of Min-Jee's assets are frozen. Everything I own is evidence or contaminated or—" She trailed off. Grace hadn't thought about the practical implications. Maya was essentially homeless now, her legal guardian arrested, her home a crime scene, her identity in question. At 12 years old, she should have been worrying about homework and friends and piano practice, not where she'd sleep tonight or whether her entire life had been a lie. "We'll figure it out," Grace promised. "Jae-hoon's lawyers will handle the legal stuff. When I'm cleared medically, we'll find you a safe place to stay. And we'll work on the asylum petition together." What happens to Min-Jee? Prison, for a long time. Attempted murder, child abuse, embezzlement, conspiracy to murder federal agents, the list is long. Maya nodded slowly. "Good, that's good." But her voice wavered, betraying the complicated grief of losing an abusive parent who'd still been the only mother she'd known. They fell into silence. Grace's eyes were getting heavy, the painkillers and exhaustion pulling her toward sleep. But she fought it, wanting to stay present with Maya for as long as possible. "Grace?" Maya's voice was very small. Thank you for not giving up on me, for coming all this way, for fighting even when your hands were broken and you were dying." Maya's voice cracked. "Thank you for being my mom." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for letting me try." She drifted off to sleep with Maya safe in her arms, for the first time in 12 years feeling like maybe, just maybe, she'd done something right. 2 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms, legal consultations, and difficult conversations. Jae-hoon survived surgery. The bullet had missed major organs by millimeters, and while his recovery would be long and painful, he would live. He spent those 2 weeks in a hospital room 3 doors down from Grace's, both of them recovering under police guard. The U.S. federal prosecutor arrived on day 3, a stern woman named Catherine Rodriguez, who made it clear that the deaths of 15 American FBI agents demanded accountability. But she also acknowledged that Grace had been manipulated and had ultimately helped save 7 lives. The charges would stand, but the prosecution would recommend leniency. Agent Marcus Cole visited on day 5. He was still weak from the poison, but alive and determined to see Grace face to face. They talked for 2 hours about the attack, about his team, about the 15 agents under his command who died. He didn't forgive her, but he understood. And he promised to testify about Min-Jee's manipulation at the asylum hearing. Maya stayed by Grace's side almost constantly. Jae-hoon's lawyers arranged temporary guardianship, allowing Maya to legally remain in Grace's care while the asylum petition was processed. The girl slept in a cot in Grace's hospital room, ate meals from the hospital cafeteria, and slowly began the process of figuring out who she was without Min-Jee's influence. The chemically lightened skin began to fade as Maya stopped receiving the injections. Her natural caramel tone emerged gradually, like a photograph developing. Her hair's natural texture showed at the roots loose curls that Maya stared at in mirrors with fascination and confusion. On day 7, Grace's mother video called from Los Angeles. Seeing her mother's face-warm brown skin, natural gray hair, eyes full of love and tears made Grace break down completely. And then her mother asked to see Maya. "Is that her? Is that my grandbaby?" Maya, nervous and uncertain, moved into camera view. Grace's mother started crying, reaching toward the screen like she could touch Maya through it. "You're beautiful," she whispered. "You look just like your mama did at your age. Oh baby, I've been praying for this day." Maya stared at this grandmother she'd never known existed. You want to know me? Even though you're what, sugar? Even though you're perfect? Even though you're my granddaughter? Yes, baby, I want to know everything about you." It was the first time Grace saw Maya genuinely smile, a real smile, not the careful, controlled expression Min-Jee had taught her. It transformed her face, made her look her age for once. On day 10, Grace was cleared for discharge. Her broken ribs were healing. The internal injuries had stabilized, and while her hands would never fully recover, she had enough function for daily tasks. She'd lost the surgeon-level dexterity that had made her so dangerous with the acupuncture needle, but she could feed herself, dress herself, manage basic self-care. Jae-hoon was discharged 2 days later. He was pale, moving carefully to protect his healing wounds, but determined to be present. His lawyers had arranged for a temporary apartment where Grace and Maya could stay during the asylum process, a safe house, essentially, with 24/7 security. The apartment was in Itaewon, the international district. It was modest by Jae-hoon's standards, just 2 bedrooms, a living area, basic furnishings, but it felt like a palace to Grace after 6 months of living in a tiny studio while working as a waitress. Maya chose the smaller bedroom, claiming she liked how the window faced east to catch morning light. Grace took the larger one, still moving stiffly from her injuries. That first night in the apartment, Grace lay in an actual bed for the first time in 2 weeks and couldn't sleep. Every sound made her tense, expecting police or assassins or Min-Jee somehow escaped from prison. The trauma of the past weeks sat heavy on her chest, making breathing difficult. A soft knock on her door. "Grace, are you awake?" "Yeah, baby." "Come in." Maya entered wearing pajamas Jae-hoon had bought her, simple, age-appropriate. Nothing like the designer clothes Min-Jee had dressed her in. She climbed onto Grace's bed without asking permission, curling into her side exactly like she had in the hospital. "I can't sleep," Maya admitted. "Every time I close my eyes I see Dr. Yoon's body, or the agents dying, or Min-Jee's face when she—" "I know. I see them too." They lay together in the darkness, 2 traumatized people trying to find comfort in proximity. "Grace? What happens now?" It was such a big question. What happened now involved asylum hearings and criminal trials and therapy sessions and figuring out how to be a mother to a child she barely knew. It involved learning to live with permanent nerve damage and the weight of 23 deaths. It involved helping Maya navigate her identity and healing and education in a country that might not accept her. But in that moment, in the darkness of their temporary apartment, Grace gave the simple answer. "Now we heal, together." Maya's hand found Grace's damaged one, their fingers intertwining despite Grace's limited grip strength. "Together," Maya echoed. 6 months later, Grace stood in a community center in Itaewon, watching a group of women practice self-defense techniques. The spring afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the practice mats where her students moved through basic stances and blocks. Her hands were in adaptive braces, custom-made devices that gave her damaged fingers some stability and support. She'd never regain the fine motor control she'd once had, would never again be able to strike pressure points with surgical precision. But she could demonstrate, could use her voice to instruct, could show these women how to protect themselves using techniques that didn't require perfect hands. "Remember, you don't need to be strong," Grace called out, her voice carrying across the room. "You need to be smart. Use momentum. Use leverage. Your attacker's weight becomes your weapon." The class was diverse: Korean women, international expats, some biracial women who'd found community in Grace's teaching. They ranged from their 20s to their 60s, all united by the desire to feel safe in their own bodies. Grace walked between them, correcting stances with gentle touches from her braced hands. A Korean woman in her 30s was struggling with a blocking technique. Grace demonstrated with her feet and elbows instead. See, you don't need hands for everything. The human body has many weapons if you know how to use them. The woman tried again, successfully this time, and broke into a proud smile. At the edge of the practice area, Maya sat doing homework. She came to every class ostensibly to study in a quiet space, but Grace knew she was watching, absorbing, learning. At 13 now, Maya had grown 2 inches and gained healthy weight. Her skin had returned to its natural caramel tone, not as dark as Grace's deep brown, but beautiful in its own right, showing her mixed heritage proudly. Her hair had been the biggest transformation. Once Maya stopped straightening it, her natural 3C curls had emerged. It had taken months of patient care, Grace learning from YouTube tutorials how to handle textured hair she'd never had herself. Maya learning to love a texture Min-Jee had taught her to hate. Now Maya wore her curls in a high puff, secured with a bright yellow scrunchie that matched her t-shirt. The class ended with cool-down stretches. Grace's students bowed respectfully, a Korean custom she'd adopted, and began gathering their belongings. One woman approached as others filed out. She was biracial like Maya, Korean and black, in her mid-20s. "Teacher Grace, thank you. This class, it's helping me feel less afraid. You're doing great, Hana. Your blocks are getting stronger every week." Hana hesitated, then asked, "Is it true what people say? That you took down 30 men in one night?" Grace's smile faded slightly. The story had spread, sensationalized by media coverage of Min-Jee's trial. Some versions made Grace sound like an action hero. Others painted her as a vigilante who'd murdered federal agents. The truth, as always, was more complicated. "I fought 30 men because I thought I was protecting my daughter," Grace said carefully. "I didn't know they were federal agents, and 23 of them died because I was tricked into using a poisoned weapon. That's not heroism, that's tragedy." Hana nodded slowly. "But you saved 7, and you saved your daughter. That counts for something. I try to remember that on the hard days." Hana left. Maya packed her homework and came over, her worn backpack slung over one shoulder. "Ready to go?" "Almost. I need to lock up." As Grace secured the community center, her phone buzzed. A text from Jae-hoon. "Asylum hearing decision came through. Can you come by the restaurant?" Grace's stomach dropped. The asylum hearing had been 3 weeks ago, a grueling 6-hour process where she'd testified about Min-Jee's attempt to murder her 12 years ago, the continued persecution, and why returning to the United States would put her in danger. Agent Cole had testified. Jae-hoon had testified. Even Maya had taken the stand, her young voice steady as she described what Min-Jee had done. But the decision could still go either way. "What is it?" Maya asked, reading Grace's expression. "Your dad says the asylum decision is in. He wants us to come to the restaurant." Maya's eyes went wide. "Like right now?" "Right now." They caught the subway to Gangnam. Grace had learned to navigate Seoul's public transportation system over 6 months of living here. The Lotus Garden restaurant had been closed for months during the investigation, but Jae-hoon had recently reopened it. He'd kept his promise to go legitimate, severing ties with his previous criminal associations. The restaurant was clean now, a real business with real income, no longer a front for anything darker. They arrived at 4 p.m. between lunch and dinner service. The restaurant looked different and daylightless glamorous than Grace remembered from that night, but somehow more real. Jae-hoon sat in a corner booth, an official-looking envelope on the table in front of him. He looked better than he had 6 months ago. The gunshot wounds had healed, though he moved with slight stiffness on his left side. His suits were less severe now. He'd traded the 3-piece designs for simple blazers and open-collar shirts. The scar across his eyebrow seemed less prominent, or maybe Grace had just gotten used to it. "You didn't open it?" Grace asked as she and Maya slid into the booth across from him. "It's your future. You should open it." Grace's damaged hands fumbled with the envelope. Maya gently took it from her, slid it open with her finger, and pulled out the official document. Her eyes scanned the Korean text, translating as she read. "The Republic of Korea grants asylum status to Grace Chen, USA national, on the grounds of credible threat to life and safety in country of origin and documented persecution by Korean national Min-Jee Park." Maya looked up, her eyes shining. "You can stay. You're approved." Grace felt tears spill down her full cheeks. 6 months of uncertainty, of wondering if she'd be deported back to the United States and separated from Maya again, of living in legal limbo. It was over. She could stay. Maya launched across the table, wrapping her arms around Grace's neck. "You can stay. You're not leaving. Jae-hoon smiled, something warm and genuine that transformed his usually controlled expression. Congratulations, though the criminal charges still stand. 2 years probation, community service. I know. Grace had pled guilty to reckless endangerment and illegal weapons possession. The court had been lenient given the circumstances, but she still had to serve her sentence. 500 hours of community service. She was 3 months in, teaching self-defense classes as part of her service. But I can do probation here, with Maya. With both of us, Jae-hoon corrected gently. The three of them had formed an unconventional family over 6 months. Jae-hoon and Grace weren't romantic. Their relationship was too complicated, built on trauma and shared responsibility for Maya rather than attraction. But they were partners in parenting, figuring out together how to help a traumatized 13-year-old navigate an identity crisis and heal from years of psychological abuse. Maya split her time between them. Some nights at the apartment with Grace, some nights at Jae-hoon's new place, a modest condo he'd bought after selling the mansion he'd shared with Min-Jee. They coordinated on school, on therapy appointments, on the 1,000 small decisions that came with raising a teenager. I got accepted, Maya said suddenly, pulling a paper from her backpack, to the international school, the one with a support program for biracial students. Grace took the acceptance letter, her braced hands holding it carefully. Seoul International Academy, a school that explicitly welcomed mixed heritage students and had counselors trained in identity development. It was expensive, but Jae-hoon had offered to pay tuition. Baby, this is amazing. When do you start? September, after summer break. Maya's excitement dimmed slightly. But I'm scared. What if the other kids don't like me? What if I don't fit in there either? Then you'll find the kids who do like you, Grace said firmly, and you'll build your own community, just like you're doing at my self-defense classes. Maya had started helping with the beginner students, showing them techniques in ways that were less intimidating than Grace's demonstrations. The teenage girls especially responded to her, someone closer to their age, who understood their fears. Jae-hoon's phone rang. He checked it, frowned. I need to take this. It's my lawyer. About Min-Jee's sentencing hearing. He stepped away, leaving Grace and Maya alone in the booth. Maya picked at the edge of the acceptance letter. Do you ever think about her? Min-Jee? Grace had been waiting for this question. Maya asked variations of it periodically, still processing the complicated grief of losing an abusive parent. Sometimes, do you? All the time. Maya's voice was small. I dream about her. Sometimes she's the nice version, the one who helped with homework and played piano with me. Sometimes she's the scary version from the airport. Sometimes she's both at once. That makes sense. She was both. People aren't all good or all bad. Do you hate her? Grace considered the question carefully. I hate what she did. I hate that she tried to kill me, that she stole you, that she abused you for 12 years. But I pity her. She was so consumed by fear and hate that she destroyed everything good in her life. The prosecutor said she's going to prison for 20 years minimum, probably longer. With all the charges: attempted murder, child abuse, embezzlement, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, she's looking at life in prison. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Is it bad that part of me is sad about that? Grace reached across the table, her braced hand covering Maya's. No, baby, it's not bad. She was your mother for 12 years, even if she was a terrible one. You're allowed to grieve what you lost, even while being glad you're safe from her. My therapist says the same thing, that I can hold both feelings at once. Your therapist is smart. Maya had been seeing a child psychologist twice a week, someone who specialized in trauma and identity development. Grace had her own therapist, working through PTSD from the fight, guilt over the agent's deaths, and the complicated process of sudden motherhood. Jae-hoon returned, his expression grim. Min-Jee's sentencing is scheduled for next month. They're asking if Maya wants to give a victim impact statement. Maya went pale. I'd have to see her. You'd be in the same courtroom, yes. But you wouldn't have to speak if you don't want to. And if you do speak, we'll be there with you. I don't know if I can face her. Grace squeezed Maya's hand. You have time to decide. No one's forcing you to do anything you're not ready for. They left the restaurant together, walking through Gangnam's busy streets. It was golden hour, the sun painting Seoul in warm tones. They passed Korean BBQ restaurants starting to fill up for dinner, coffee shops where students studied, street vendors selling tteokbokki and hotteok. Grace had learned to love this city over 6 months. It wasn't home, not the way Los Angeles would always be home, but it was becoming familiar. She knew which subway transfers to take, which restaurants had English menus, which neighborhoods were safest to walk through after dark. She knew enough Korean now to handle basic conversations, though Maya still translated anything complex. "Can we get hotteok?" Maya asked, pointing to a street vendor. "Sure, baby." They bought the sweet-filled pancakes, eating them as they walked. Jae-hoon peeled off at his condo building with promises to see them for dinner later that week. Grace and Maya continued to their apartment. Inside, Grace checked the mail. Bills, junk, and a thick envelope from the United States. She opened it carefully. It was from her mother, a care package full of things Grace had mentioned missing. Hot sauce from their favorite Louisiana restaurant. A CD of her mother's church choir. Photos of family gatherings Grace had missed. And a letter, handwritten on her mother's good stationery. "My dearest Grace, your sister sends her love and says she's saving vacation days to visit you and Maya this fall. Your nephew Marcus asks about his cousin Maya every day. He wants to know if she likes dinosaurs because he has some plastic ones he wants to send her. I know these past months have been hard, baby girl. I know you're carrying guilt about those agents who died. But I need you to hear me. You are not a murderer. You were a mother protecting her child with a weapon you didn't know was poisoned. The blood is on Min-Jee's hands, not yours. Maya needs you. She needs your strength, your love, your presence. Don't let guilt make you disappear on her the way Min-Jee tried to make her disappear. Be present, be imperfect, be human. That's all any mother can do. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of how you fought for your daughter. I'm proud of how you're building a life there. And I can't wait to hold both of you in my arms when you come visit this summer. All my love." Mama Grace read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face. Maya came over, reading over her shoulder. "She really wants to meet me," Maya said, her voice wondering. "She really does. My whole family does. When do we go?" Grace had been planning this, saving money from her community center teaching. "Summer. After school lets out, 2 weeks in Los Angeles. You'll meet your grandmother, your aunts, your cousin. You'll see where I grew up. You'll eat real soul food, not my terrible attempts at cooking it." Maya's face lit up. "Really? We're really going?" "Really, if you want to. I want to." Maya paused. "Will people there accept me? Even though I'm also Korean? My family will love you exactly as you are. As for everyone else, some will, some won't. But you'll have us. You'll always have us." That night, Grace lay in bed, unable to sleep despite exhaustion. Her body still hadn't adjusted to feeling safe. 6 months of relative peace, and she still expected violence to crash through the windows. Her phone buzzed. A text from Agent Cole. "Saw the news about your asylum approval. Congratulations. You earned it." Grace typed back with clumsy fingers, "Thank you for testifying. You saved my life. Testifying was the least I could do." A pause, then another message. "The Bureau is creating a memorial for the agents who died. Your name will be included as someone who tried to save them. Thought you should know." Grace stared at the message, emotions warring in her chest. She didn't feel she deserved memorial inclusion. But Agent Cole thought she did, and he'd lost 15 people under his command. "Thank you. That means more than you know." She set the phone down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she'd teach another self-defense class. Tomorrow she'd help Maya with homework and make dinner and navigate the ongoing chaos of building a family from scratch. Tomorrow she'd live with the weight of 23 deaths and the grace of 7 lives saved. Tomorrow she'd keep going, because that's what survivors did. The sentencing hearing for Min-Jee Park took place on a humid August morning. The Seoul Central District Court was imposing all concrete and glass and the weight of justice. Grace stood outside with Maya, both of them dressed formally. Grace wore a simple black dress that accommodated her braced hands, and Maya wore slacks and a button-up shirt that Jae-hoon had helped her pick out. "I don't have to do this," Maya said for the 3rd time that morning. We can just go home." "We can," Grace agreed. "But I think you'll regret it if you don't. This is your chance to tell everyone what she did to you. What it meant, how it affected you. What if I cry? Then you cry. There's no shame in that." Jae-hoon arrived, moving carefully in his suit. The shoulder wound still bothered him on humid days. He carried a folder of papers, his own victim impact statement about the embezzlement, the lies, the betrayal. "Ready?" he asked. Maya took a shaky breath. "No, but let's go anyway." The courtroom was packed. Media representatives filled the gallery. Min-Jee's trial had been sensational, drawing attention from Korean and international press. The story had everything: wealth, murder, racism, a stolen child, poison, violence. It had become shorthand for discussing colorism and child abuse in Korea. Min-Jee sat at the defendant's table, flanked by lawyers. Grace barely recognized her. 6 months in prison had stripped away the expensive cosmetics and designer clothes and constant cosmetic maintenance. Her hair was gray at the roots, her face showing its real age without Botox and fillers. She looked small, diminished, human in a way she hadn't during her reign of controlled perfection. When Min-Jee's eyes found Maya across the courtroom, something in her face crumpled. She started to stand, as if to reach for her daughter, but her lawyers pulled her back down. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, called the hearing to order. The prosecution outlined the charges and their recommended sentence: 25 years to life, given the severity and number of crimes. Then came the victim impact statements. Agent Cole went first, his voice steady as he described losing 15 agents under his command. He spoke about their families, their children, their futures that had been stolen. About the 7 who survived but would carry permanent nerve damage. About the cost of Min-Jee's manipulations measured in human lives. Min-Jee kept her eyes on the table, her frozen face unable to show the emotion Grace suspected was happening underneath. Jae-hoon went next. He spoke about 12 years of lies, about being told his surrogate had died when she'd actually been thrown downstairs, about raising a daughter while his wife systematically erased half her heritage, about the $75 million embezzled, money meant for legitimate business that Min-Jee had stolen to fund her escape. "I loved my wife," Jae-hoon said, his voice rough. "Or I loved who I thought she was. The woman I married doesn't exist. She was always a fiction, a performance. And I'll spend the rest of my life unpacking how I missed the signs that she was capable of such cruelty." Then it was Maya's turn. Grace felt her daughter's hand tighten around hers. "I can't do this." "You can. I'm right here." Maya stood on shaking legs and walked to the witness stand. She looked so small up there, so young. But when she began to speak, her voice was clear. "My name is Maya Park, or maybe it's Maya Chin Park. I'm still figuring that out." She paused. "Min-Jee Park is the only mother I knew for 12 years. She tucked me in at night. She helped me with piano practice. She came to my school events. She told me she loved me every single day." Maya's voice cracked, but she pushed through. "She also poisoned me. Every week she injected chemicals into my skin to make me lighter. She straightened my hair to hide my natural texture. She told me I had a disease that would kill me if I didn't get treatments. She made me afraid of my own body." Min-Jee was crying now, silent tears running down her face. "I didn't know I was biracial until 7 months ago," Maya continued. "I didn't know my birth mother was alive. I didn't know half my family existed. Min-Jee stole 12 years of my life where I could have known who I really was. She stole my identity and replaced it with one she found acceptable." Maya looked directly at Min-Jee for the first time. "You told me you loved me. Maybe you did, but your love hurt me. Your love tried to erase me, and I'm done letting you define who I am." She stepped down from the witness stand and walked back to Grace, her head held high despite the tears streaming down her face. Grace wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her as Maya's composure finally broke, and she sobbed into Grace's shoulder. The judge called a recess. When they reconvened, Min-Jee's lawyers made their final arguments: diminished capacity, cultural context, genuine love for her daughter gone wrong. But the evidence was overwhelming, the crimes too severe. The judge's sentence came down hard: 30 years without possibility of parole for the first 15. By the time Min-Jee would be eligible for parole, she'd be 77 years old. "This court recognizes that you acted from a place of fear and cultural prejudice," the judge said, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "But fear does not excuse child abuse. Cultural context does not excuse attempted murder. And real love does not require destroying the beloved to make them acceptable." Min-Jee was led away by court officers. As she passed the gallery where Grace, Maya, and Jae-hoon sat, she stopped and looked at Maya one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered in Korean. "I loved you. I'm sorry." Maya didn't respond. She simply watched as the woman who'd raised her was taken away, 30 years of prison stretching ahead of her. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Jae-hoon's security team created a barrier, but reporters shouted questions in Korean and English. "Maya, how do you feel about the sentence?" "Grace, do you forgive Min-Jee Park? Will you stay in Korea or return to America?" Maya surprised everyone by stopping and turning to face the cameras. Grace started to pull her away, but Maya shook her head. "I want to say something." She stepped up to the cluster of microphones, her young face serious. When she spoke, it was in Korean first, then English. "My name is Maya Chen Park. I'm 13 years old. I'm Korean and black and American. For 12 years, someone tried to erase part of who I am because they thought it was shameful. But there's no shame in my heritage. There's no shame in being mixed. And if my story can help even one other biracial kid in Korea feel less alone, then maybe something good can come from this. The reporters exploded with follow-up questions, but Jae-hoon's security team moved them through the crowd to a waiting car. In the safety of the vehicle, driving away from the courthouse, Maya finally let herself collapse. She leaned against Grace, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day. "You were so brave," Grace said softly. "I was terrified. Being brave means doing it anyway." Jae-hoon drove them not to their apartment but to the Lotus Garden restaurant. It was closed for a private event, the event being just the three of them apparently. Inside, the table was set with Korean dishes and American soul food in a fusion that made Grace smile. "I thought we could use a family dinner," Jae-hoon explained. To mark the end of this chapter, they ate together, the conversation slowly shifting from the heavy weight of the sentencing to lighter topics. Maya talked about her excitement for the new school. Jae-hoon mentioned he was thinking of opening a second restaurant. Grace shared stories about her students at the community center. It felt normal as anything could feel for a family formed from trauma and violence and 12 years of separation. After dinner, they walked through Gangnam together, the neighborhood where it had all started 7 months ago, the restaurant where 30 operatives had attacked, the streets Grace had walked as a waitress, watching her daughter from a distance, planning a rescue that had gone so catastrophically wrong. "Do you regret it?" Jae-hoon asked suddenly. "Coming to Korea? Fighting for Maya? Everything that happened?" Grace thought about the question carefully. 23 federal agents dead, her hands permanently damaged. 6 months of legal battles and trauma and uncertainty. A life torn apart and rebuilt in a foreign country. But Maya was walking ahead of them, her natural curls bouncing with each step, her body language open in a way it had never been under Min-Jee's control. She was laughing at something on her phone, probably a message from one of the friends she'd made at Grace's self-defense classes. "No," Grace said finally. "I don't regret it. I'd do it all again, even knowing the cost." Even knowing the cost. 2 weeks later, Grace and Maya boarded a plane to Los Angeles. It was Maya's first time leaving Korea, her first time on an airplane, her first time meeting Grace's family. Maya was terrified. She gripped the armrest during takeoff, her knuckles white. Grace held her hand with her braced fingers, providing what comfort she could. "What if they don't like me?" Maya asked for the 100th time. "They'll love you, I promise." Los Angeles in late August was hot and smoggy and achingly familiar. Grace breathed in the California air and felt something in her chest unclench. She'd made a life in Seoul, but this was home. Grace's mother was waiting at arrivals, and when she saw them, she burst into tears. She rushed forward and pulled Maya into a hug before the girl could even react. "Oh baby, oh my sweet baby, I've been waiting so long to meet you." Maya stood frozen for a moment, then her arms came up hesitantly to return the embrace. She looked at Grace over her grandmother's shoulder, her expression wondering and overwhelmed. Grace's sisters were there too, Aunt Patricia and Aunt Denise, both talking over each other in their excitement. And Marcus, 7 years old, with gaps in his teeth and a plastic dinosaur in each hand. "I brought you dinosaurs," he announced to Maya. "Grandma said you're my cousin and we have to share toys and stuff." Maya took the offered dinosaurs, a genuine smile breaking across her face. "Thank you. I love dinosaurs." "Really? That's so cool. Do you have a favorite?" "Mine's the T-Rex, but Dad says that's basic, so I also like the Ankylosaurus because it has armor and—" He kept talking, his 7-year-old energy boundless, and Maya let herself be pulled along in his enthusiasm. The 2 weeks in Los Angeles passed in a blur of family gatherings, soul food dinners, and cultural immersion. Grace took Maya to the hospital where she'd given birth 13 years ago, to the apartment where she'd lived as a struggling surrogate, to the beaches and museums and neighborhoods that had shaped Grace's own childhood. Maya met her grandfather's grave. He'd died 2 years before Grace found her, never getting to meet his granddaughter. Maya left flowers and cried for a man she'd never known but who'd loved her anyway through Grace's stories. Grace's mother taught Maya to cook collard greens and cornbread. Her aunts taught her card games and shared family gossip. Marcus appointed himself Maya's personal tour guide, dragging her to every playground and ice cream shop in their neighborhood. And slowly, Maya began to understand what it meant to be part of this family, to be black and accepted, celebrated, loved exactly as she was. On their last night in Los Angeles, Grace's mother pulled her aside while Maya and Marcus were playing video games. "You did good, baby girl," her mother said. "I know these past months have been hard. I know you're carrying guilt about those agents. But look at that child in there. Look at how she's blooming. You gave her that." Grace looked at Maya, laughing at something Marcus said. Her natural curls wild and beautiful, her skin its natural tone, her body language open and free. "I almost lost her," Grace whispered. "So many times, in the hospital 12 years ago, at the restaurant, at the airport, I almost lost her, but you didn't. You fought for her. You bled for her. You were willing to die for her. That's what love is, Grace. That's what being a mother means." Grace let herself cry in her mother's arms, releasing months of tension and fear and guilt. Her mother held her, rocking her like she had when Grace was young, murmuring comfort in the same voice that had soothed childhood nightmares. When they flew back to Seoul, Maya fell asleep on Grace's shoulder somewhere over the Pacific. Grace looked down at her daughter, at the miracle of her survival, at the complexity of her identity, at the future stretching ahead of them both. It wouldn't be easy. Maya would face racism in both Korea and America. She'd struggle with identity and belonging and the trauma of her first 12 years. She'd need therapy and patience and unconditional love. But Grace would be there, every step, every struggle, every triumph, because that's what mothers did. 6 months later, a full year after the restaurant attack, Grace stood in the same community center where she taught self-defense. But today was different. Today, the center was hosting a celebration. On the wall hung Grace's old acupuncture needle in a shadow box frame. A plaque beneath it read in Korean and English, "The weapon that saved 7 lives, Grace Chen, 2025. Sometimes protection requires sacrifice, and healing requires breaking first." The center had dedicated the space to Grace's work, recognizing her 500 hours of community service, her teaching, her advocacy for self-defense education for women and girls. Agent Cole had flown in from Washington, D.C. for the ceremony. He stood beside Grace as the center director gave a speech about courage and redemption. "You know," Agent Cole said quietly, "I lost 15 good people that night. I'll carry that for the rest of my life." "I know. I'm sorry. But I would have lost all 30 if you hadn't cooperated. If you hadn't helped us identify the toxin, hadn't led us to Min-Jee. 7 people are alive because when it mattered most, you chose to save lives instead of protect yourself." He paused. "That counts for something. Does it balance the scale? No. Nothing balances that scale, but it tips it toward redemption. That's all any of us can hope for, to tip the scale, even when we can't balance it." Maya was there too, sitting with Jae-hoon in the audience. At 14 now, she'd grown into herself, tall like her father, curvy like Grace, with a confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was. She wore her natural curls in 2 puffs, and a shirt that said "Blasian" and "Beautiful" in Korean and English. She'd become an advocate at her international school, starting a support group for biracial students. She gave talks about colorism and identity. She'd even started a blog about her experience, helping other mixed kids in Korea feel less alone. After the ceremony, they went to dinner. Grace, Maya, Jae-hoon, Agent Cole, and some of Grace's students from the community center. They packed into a Korean BBQ restaurant, the kind where you cooked your own meat at the table and the soju flowed freely. Grace watched her unlikely family laughing together, a Korean Mafia boss turned legitimate businessman, an FBI agent who'd survived nerve toxin, a teenager navigating 2 cultures, women from her classes who'd found strength in community. This was healing, messy, complicated, imperfect healing, built on tragedy and loss but reaching toward something better. Later that night, back at the apartment, Maya found Grace on the balcony looking out at Seoul's skyline. "Mom?" Maya had started calling her that consistently now, the word coming naturally after a year of building trust. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything, the past year, how we got here, where we're going." Maya joined her at the railing. "Do you think you'll ever stop feeling guilty about the agents who died?" "No, I don't think guilt like that ever fully goes away, but I'm learning to carry it without letting it crush me." "Your therapist?" "My therapist is very wise." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. "I've been thinking about something," Maya said. "About college. I know I'm only 14, but I've been thinking about it anyway." "What about it?" "I want to study psychology. Maybe become a therapist who works with adoptees and biracial kids. People who are figuring out identity stuff like I am." Grace felt pride swell in her chest. "That's a beautiful goal." "Think I can do it?" "Baby, I've seen you face down a woman who poisoned you for 12 years. I've seen you give victim testimony in front of national media. I've seen you build community from scratch in a country that didn't always accept you. You can do anything. Maya leaned her head on Grace's shoulder. Thank you for not giving up on me, for coming all this way, for fighting even when it meant destroying yourself. Thank you for letting me be your mom, for forgiving me for giving you away, for giving me a second chance. We gave each other second chances. Grace wrapped her arm around Maya's shoulders, her braced hand resting gently. They stood like that, watching Seoul breathe and pulse with life, two survivors learning what it meant to thrive. Somewhere in a prison across the city, Min-Jee sat in a cell, facing 30 years of consequences. Somewhere in Washington, D.C., 15 families mourned agents who would never come home. Somewhere in Los Angeles, Grace's mother prayed for her granddaughter's healing. And here, on this balcony in Itaewon, a mother and daughter who'd been stolen from each other and fought their way back together, stood united against whatever came next. The past couldn't be changed. The dead couldn't be brought back. The damage couldn't be fully undone. But they could move forward. They could heal. They could choose every single day to be better than their worst moments. Grace Chen had come to Seoul with poison in her hands and vengeance in her heart. She'd left broken and guilt-ridden, marked by violence and loss. But she'd also gained something invaluable, something worth every scar, every broken bone, every sleepless night haunted by the agents' faces. She'd gained her daughter back, and in the end that tipped the scale toward redemption.